Welcome everybody to our June OWASP Boston chapter meeting. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Today, this meeting is sponsored by LastCon, who's providing the food. Our annual conference, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Also, the facilities is graciously provided by National Instruments, so thanks. I'm Tiana Chandler, the chapter leader, and I have listed here the rest of our chapter leadership. If you see anybody here, you know, contact them and talk to them about the different areas in which they're responsible for. For CPEs, at this point, we have it where I would just ask that you email me and I could send you a certificate. To show your support for OWASP, there's several things you can do. You can volunteer either as the leadership, speaker opportunities, as such as this meeting, and then just get volunteer with some other events that we may have. If you shop with Amazon, then the smile.amazon.com is a way where you can choose OWASP. We can get a portion of that. As far as OWASP membership, you do not have to be a member to participate in this meeting. However, you could give back through your membership, and there's several types of memberships that you can sign up for. And actually, the link here, we do have austin.owasp.org working again, so that's a shortcut URL you can use to get to our wiki page. We have a study group ongoing, and it's here at National Instruments in Building A, and it's a weekly one. And currently, I believe it's Malware Unicorn RE101. If you have any questions about that, you can talk to Matt Pardo, who organizes that. And there's a Slack channel here that you can participate in the discussions, ongoing discussions. LastCon this year is going to be October 23rd through 26th. We're going to have some two-day training as well as the conference session days. I'll thank him if you want to say a few words.
Hi, everybody. I'm the conference chair for LastCon this year, and on behalf of the team of volunteers, there's a lot of us in the room as well. One of the things that I wanted to call out is the call for presentations is open, as well as the call for training. The deadline for presentation submissions is July 31st, so please get those in. If there's people that you want to see speak, encourage them on social media to get their submissions in. Training will have, the call for training will be wrapped up here shortly. We'll have those courses announced, and hopefully by the July meeting, have those classes announced in terms of what the schedule will be.
Thank you. Upcoming chapter events. We actually do have a training that was we set up for advanced PowerShell, but it sold out pretty quick when we announced it. We are going to look at more opportunities for that. Yes. We didn't set up one, but I guess we need to work with our trainer to see if he can accommodate more people. That's, you know, because if someone's already paid, unless they want to trade their ticket for somebody, to give it to somebody else. Yeah, I'm not sure. I could talk with Matt Pardo about how he wants to handle that. He did mention it about having a wait list. So if that makes sense, then we'll set up one here in the next day or two. Okay, sure. And the Austin Security Professionals Happy Hour, the next one will be at Baby Acapulco's on July 12th, so just save that date. Other upcoming local events, just listed a few of them here. I know ISSA has a calendar that they try to keep up with all the different things going on here in the Austin area. If you're interested in those other organizations or meetings, you can go see that. like to take an opportunity now to open it up to talk someone to mention about job opportunities. And so if anybody here has any job postings you want to talk about.
Hey everybody, I'm David. I work at a company called All Clear ID, and we have an open SecOps engineer position. If you're up for a new challenge and like working on a smaller team, lots of hats and responsibilities and puzzles to solve, find me after this meeting.
Anybody?
Hey there, I'm Noah Dunker. I just moved here from Kansas City, starting at Zynga, and I am looking for a principal software engineer with some web application security experience. So you can just find me after the meeting.
Hi, I'm David. The General Motors Security Assurance team is hiring. I don't know what all the positions are going to be. There potentially could be red teaming, vulnerability management, that sort of thing. Feel free to shoot me a resume. I think we're only open for like another month or so. So if you're interested, please shoot me a resume and I can forward it on to the correct people.
Anybody else? Okay. And now I'd like to present the state of DevSecOps, Ernest Mueller and James Wickett.
How's everybody doing? Good. This talk is good. You know, I'm really glad about that PowerShell class. I got 12 tickets that I bought up, so I'm ready for the secondary market to open up on that. It's really good. I'm excited. You know, I think that's really great. Like Austin OWASP has really does a lot of really great stuff for the community. The last con event is always really fun. If you haven't been to that, be sure to check that out. We're really glad and really blessed to live in a city that kind of has that level of participation and kind of excellence in the application security community. When I go around, I see other people like, and they're in other chapters which they'll remain nameless. They're like, oh, Austin's always the best, you know. Like my chapters, I wish it was like Austin, you know. So we live in a really cool city, and that's really great. So I guess you already know that. See, all right, there we go. Okay, so this is DevSecOps in the year of 2018. So I was just giving my opening.
Just checking to make sure this works.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so who are these people in front of you?
Auto advancing is the problem. Hold on.
Well, we'll go.
We didn't plan to do this as a lightning talk, so.
While Ernest is working with that, I want to give you guys a little, like, set the stage here a little bit for this talk. So this is our first time to do this version of the talk, and we're doing it again for the DevOps meetup here in Austin in July, in a couple weeks. And we're focusing on the topic of DevSecOps, kind of that intersection between DevOps and security. And we're going to talk about the DevSecOps report, and we're going to go through some stuff that we've seen kind of in the industry. But we're really hoping, but we only have slides for like 20 minutes. So we could just like say, oh, sweet, we're done and end early. But really our hope is to have a conversation around the topic of DevSecOps, the stuff that people are seeing, you know, in their places of work, or they're seeing throughout the industry, and kind of further that conversation. So do you have any other comments on that?
No, I mean, aside from asking folks if they know even basically what we're talking about, right? So we'll start with the easy one. Who's familiar with Infosec? Okay, I figured this was the key audience for something like that. How about DevOps? People. Okay, good. How about DevSecOps? All right, you know, newly rebranded, but. So we've been working in kind of the conjunction of those two efforts, and we wanted to share some of the things that have been found out, but also, as James says, engage y'all in a conversation about what you're seeing both here in the Austin community and outside it.
Well, so I'm James Wickett. I work over at Signal Sciences. We've kind of been delivering a next-gen web application firewall for I guess we're now 4 years in the making here, and And we've kind of been at this intersection. A lot of the folks on our team kind of came out of DevOps enterprises or DevOps organizations, and we're seeing like, how do we take like an old school technology like a web application firewall and make it suitable for like a modern type DevOps type of workflow that could keep up. So that's kind of why.
Cool. And I'm Ernest Mueller, Director of Engineering Operations at Alien Vault. So I'm coming at it from a little bit of the different direction, although we're a security company and we have both an appliance and a SaaS service that provide unified security management. I'm coming at it from the I run an ops team attempting to run a highly secure software as a service offering, right? So I am also a customer. What's the old commercial? Hair Club for Men. So that's me.
And we, if you want the slides, or there's also a link to the report. But if you send me an email, and you can say stuff in the email subject like that's the best presentation I've ever seen, the funniest, I laughed, I cried, or you can just leave a blank. It doesn't matter. But there's my autoresponders turned on, and so you should get all that stuff automatically. So, anyways, if someone sends an email to it that don't get the autoresponder to work, I'll correct that later. But I did check to make sure that's set up. So.
In fact, James was very proud. He did this presentation using, what's it called?
We used a new app for this. We used DevSecOps. Anybody else use DevSecOps? Check it out. It's pretty fun. You can basically write your slides in like a text editor or an IDE like Vim or something like that, and then you can just click through your themes and auto import it. So.
It's in Markdown, and it just turns the Markdown into pretty slides. So if you're more about the text and less about the making it pretty, it does that for you.
All right, and this Ernest and I are also we have these courses we've done on lynda.com, which are if you have like a corporate subscription to LinkedIn Learning or lynda.com, we have several we've done on DevOps and some now that are coming out on DevSecOps, and there's some on Kubernetes and Lean and Agile. So if you're like that really was the funniest 30 minutes of my day today, well, you got hours that you could just sit and watch this. So I first used to joke like, because I think this one's like 3 hours long. I was like, it's the Braveheart of DevOps, and now I think we've filmed like 8 hours in the bucket so far. And it's like if you just want a marathon through listening to us talk about DevOps, like we got the ticket for you. So
yeah, it's the National Instruments pedigree. I see some of our NI folks out there. We originally all met working here at National Instruments. Me, James, Josh, and then Karthik and Peiko are the other two guys we do these courses with. So yay, National Instruments. I don't know what's up with the upside down little warning signs on the street signs though. That confused me coming in.
If you want to get a link to those, they're all on that bit.ly. Okay, we'll flip through this slide here. Okay, so what are we talking about when we think of DevSecOps? Does anybody just want to shout out just quick words that they think of when they hear of DevSecOps? Unified teams, okay. Collaboration, okay. Ownership, okay. Heresy,
yeah, security
okay, that's good.
Crammed in a process that didn't used to be.
Yeah, stuck in the middle, huh? Okay, I like that. No one said heresy. I guess that's good. Okay. All the stuff developers don't want to do. Okay, yeah, fair enough. A secure dev pipeline. Okay, yeah, so like the pipeline, the way you deliver software is part of the, somewhere mixed into the meaning behind this. Yeah, right on. All right. This side of the room.
Yeah, the wings.
Keeping it secure all the way through. Okay, that's right. Okay, yeah, some CI/CD pipeline type stuff. Okay. Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, so when we think of it, we like to think of it. Everybody like Jack Handy? Remember Jack Handy? Okay. I'm going to attempt this. DevSecOps deep thought. Maybe in order to understand DevSecOps, we have to look at the word itself. Basically, it's made up of these three separate words: DevSecOps. What do these words mean? It's a mystery, and that's why so is DevSecOps. Whenever someone asks me to define DevSecOps, I usually think about it for a minute. Then I spin around and pin the guy's arm behind his back. Now who's asking the questions? These are both kind of a parody of a parody, because there's the DevOps Deep Thoughts by Josh Zimmerman. So hey, it's about as funny as we can get on this. But it is one of those things where we do think about how DevOps is sort of a rebranding into DevSecOps. And I think if we can hit to the next slide here, I think that is part of it, right? It's the extension of DevOps. The DevOps culture, really, for the inclusion of security. That's how I like to think about it. I think a lot of the stuff that we mentioned here, this is we're really excited to do this. When we were talking to Kate about doing this, we're like, yeah, this could be really good, because the Austin OWASP crew, we've had a DevOps style track inside of LastCon for 5 years now. We've kind of had the message, a lot of the companies here are thinking about that. So we're really excited to try this kind of discussion out with y'all, because I didn't hear really wrong answers, right? Sometimes you go places and you ask people and they're like, DevOps, and you're like, okay, this is the wrong crowd for this. But I think that's where we see this kind of movement forward, where we're seeing this, the inclusion of security.
In fact, don't you touch that button yet. So we didn't rehearse this. So I think that's right. So to me, right, DevOps was really about bringing another organization into what everybody saw as the collaboration around products, right? I like how a lot of the early answers were about collaboration and ownership, because with Agile and stuff like that, it was like, oh yeah, well, of course you got your product managers and your developers and maybe QA, and that's what you need to ship product, so they should take ownership and work together, right? But of course, maybe I shouldn't say nobody ships CDs anymore, because I'm here at National Instruments, but because mostly nobody ships CDs anymore, right? And almost everything is an online service. Operations becomes a core part of everything from TurboTax to Alien Vault to Signal Sciences, right? So bringing operations into that was really the key idea behind DevOps. And then of course you had specific practices that fell out of that: CI/CD, site reliability engineering, infrastructure as code, stuff like that. And there were unique challenges to be overcome. And now DevSecOps is really, I think, just expanding that circle and saying, okay, well now security people, especially AppSec people, but other folks as well, how do we make them not the outsider? How do we engage them and get everybody kind of working on the same team towards the same goal? So that's I think what the heart of it is.
There's a great quote in this book, Thinking Security. Steve Beloven, he wrote the the book on firewalls in the late 90s. But he wrote this book, Thinking Security, I think it was in late 2015. And he says this. He says, companies are spending a great deal on security, but we read of massive computer-related attacks, and he says clearly something is wrong. The root of the problem is twofold. And he's a security, long time professional, writing to other security folks reading this. We're protecting the wrong things, and we're hurting productivity in the process. So which is a pretty that's a pretty bad. That's two bad sides of that coin, right? I think you'd be okay with it if you maybe weren't hurting productivity so much, or you were actually preventing things from happening. But this is I think this is kind of a really good statement about the industry and how security is kind of seeing itself right now. And so, and I have more thoughts on this, but we'll kind of just sort of ask, I mean, maybe is DevSecOps the best chance for Infosec really to survive kind of in the new era, right? Without being passed by kind of the migration that Ernest talked about earlier from everything kind of shipping as static software to everything as a service, and that really transformed operations. And now we're seeing some of that same transformation take place across security.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important realizations that I think we came to when we were first confronted with the idea of DevOps, right? I mean, we were working here, it was 2009, 2010, something like that. So part of that realization was that in terms of operations, we had been banging our heads against a big problem, trying to do it the right way, doing it with a bunch of great people, adequate funding, right? Here at National Instruments, where everybody's an electrical engineer or something, right? And it still wasn't being successful, not the way that it should be, right? And so when we saw DevOps, we were like, oh, like maybe if we take a different approach at it, right? Instead of cutting across the grain, cut with the grain or whatever, right? And I feel like Infosec has gotten kind of the same place, right? So, you've all maybe been to LastCon and AppSec and stuff like that, and you've seen kind of the talks talking about, well, like, is this really working, right? How many years have we been saying, you need to train your developers on OWASP top 10 and then they'll write secure web apps and whatever. Is that working out for anybody? It's not working out for me, right? At some point, we have to say maybe the way we're doing things is actually fundamentally flawed, right? None of the specific things we're doing is a bad idea, but we're just not getting this. I mean, who here feels like they are being wildly successful in their security efforts? Just, go out into the environment effortlessly and you get everything you want to get done. I mean, yeah, me neither, right? I know our security and compliance people that work with me don't feel like that because, I am their blocker some of the time, right? So I think, it's kind of put luridly in terms of best chance of survival, but we have to do something different, right? One of the reasons that Alien Vault exists is we're trying to make a security product aimed much lower at the kind of mid, small organizations. Because, like, information security isn't just for the Bank of America and stuff like that anymore, right? Everybody down to that, doctor's office, that mom and pop shop, everybody is driven off of computers now, right, without exception. And our tactics in trying to get people secure, like, they kind of work at a Bank of America, right? But obviously not at some of the other major organizations that deal with our financial information. But it certainly doesn't work on a wider scale, which is what we need for an actual secure infrastructure.
Okay, so in this year, there's been the DevSecOps Survey report. So I want to go, like, the next several bit of slides. Like, we're just going to cover in, like, what's kind of the feeling on the ground, I guess, about DevSecOps. So we'll kind of cover through that. So this was done in conjunction with a bunch of other companies, but including Sonatype and Signal Sciences. But this is the DevSecOps Community Survey 2018, and I think this is like the third year for it, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah,
but we can.
One of the things that I've appreciated about kind of the DevOps community is it's been very metrics driven. I don't know who's read like the annual DevOps reports that Puppet and Dora put out. I mean, Nicole Fosgren started a whole company, the DevOps Research. What does the A stand for?
Assessment, I think.
DevOps, okay. A whole thing around doing research and analysis and metrics around it. So that helps us because we get a little bit of decent information on it.
So we had 2,076 people responded. In this survey, I think it skewed like more towards the developers or people that were already kind of like identifying themselves as DevOps and less to the security side. So if you get the full report, you can look at all the demographic data, but it's kind of skewed more towards that side. But here's a couple of the major findings from the survey. So let's see, the first one is that right now 74% of respondents report that, I think it was like 25% say they're actually mature in their practices, or another like 49, 50% were saying that they're growing in their maturity of practices. Like, and only 25% were like saying, hey, it's not really on our radar, it's not what we're doing. So
independent of the security thing, right? Just
yeah.
Are you doing some DevOps? Yes.
Yeah. So we're seeing the growth here is pretty big. Like the amount of companies that are Now these are, again, people that are self-selected, found the DevSecOps survey, took it online. I mean, so maybe this is like the forward-thinking folks that are filling out the survey, but you can kind of get we're going to refer to them later throughout the report as like mature, and so that's this group of people versus the people who are not. So you'll see that later. And 48, I thought this one was really interesting. 48% of developers specifically say, out of the developer group cohort there, said that security is important, but they don't have enough time to spend on it, which I thought was good, because it sort of sometimes there's this story that it can kind of be pervasive among Infosec that like developers don't care about security, or they just sort of like don't really think about it. But here, it's like about half, like say like I really know that it's important, but I just feel like I don't have time to deal with it.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty good. I would say probably only 60% of developers say wearing pants is important. So that comes close.
And 73% of mature DevOps shops say that a lot of the breaches that they've been experiencing, that's been driving their interest in DevSecOps. So they've seen this as being kind of as a tie here, which I thought was interesting. So it is a demand felt based off of what they're actually experiencing in their system. And 1 in 3 report breaches due to their web application vulnerabilities, which you don't normally hear that whenever you're kind of like reading through the news, right? You see, and I thought this was really good for like the OWASP crowd to think about, because you hear like people, gaining root access or a foothold, but a lot of times the ways that they're coming in or getting access to accounts and stuff like that is through the web application layer. And so I just thought that was curious, and maybe that's something the OWASP that the OWASP crowd would really like to know and hear. Sadly, 72% of respondents say that they see security pros as a nag, which is kind of a bummer. So we still have some imaging to work on inside of the overall structure here.
Which, and I mean, and just to unpack that again with a little bit of history, right? That was a lot of operations demeanor towards developers as well 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. That's true. There's the whole meme of like the bastard operator from hell.
Yep.
There's like the kind of the Unix or Linux admin that like didn't want to give anybody access to the system and stuff like that. And yeah, so that's a really good point. Like operations face that.
Yeah, you've all seen the little T-shirts, go away, I'll replace you with a very small shell script, right? Like that all comes from that era where similarly operations was put into that role.
Yeah. Developers were not. I had developers back. I'm thinking, a decade ago, right? But developers are like, well, operations, we don't do the same thing, right? You do other stuff, right? Well, there's a good book that came out. If you haven't had a chance to pick this one up, I would highly recommend it. It's called Agile Application Security, Enabling Security in a Continuous Delivery Pipeline. Several of the authors are really good folks. I'm sure they're all good folks. I just don't know them all. But many security teams work with a worldview where their goal is to inhibit change as much as possible. So they're sort of talking about like how do you get people brought into kind of the faster delivery cycle that's kind of taking place across the many organizations. And this really kind of correlates to that previous slide of like being a nag, right? It's like they sort of are cataloging this not in data, but just as in like opinion and like as they see this kind of going throughout.
Yeah. But I mean, just a note on this book too. It doesn't, and maybe this is good, maybe this is bad. It doesn't spend a lot of time on the high level kind of happy slappy culture part. Like it's kind of an encyclopedic reference for, it's a hardcore O'Reilly book, right? So it's really good in terms of all the specific details of what's possible nowadays, of what proportions.
Yeah. The chapter on testing is really good. There's the chapter on dealing with audit and how to like do compliance, and this is great. So I mean, yeah, I would recommend picking it up and just kind of finding the topics that you're struggling with and like taking a look at that.
Yeah, it's not a give to your manager read.
That's right. It's not the Phoenix Project or anything like that. So okay, great. And then across something that the whole survey was pulled on here. 91% agree that security is part of everyone's role, which I think is kind of interesting, right? It's like you see this dichotomy in like the perception and how people are doing to like what we all agree. So to some extent, like everybody's sort of bought in on that vision that probably security's really been like this is one of the good things to come out of security, kind of being more in the news or breaches in the news, or even organizations like OWASP that kind of do a lot of awareness for that kind of stuff. Like this is a really good thing.
Yeah, the blocker isn't the willingness, right? Like the previous stat about the developers was like, well, yeah, we want to, we're just not given the time. So this stat is interesting in that it should orient our thinking from people don't agree that security is important. It's like 91% of them do, but what is it that's actually in their way from doing it? Because there's some very real answers there. It's non-trivial.
And I have a couple. I think there's 4 charts that I just wanted to look at to see how this strikes you. Because then we're going to do some questions and try to build some more conversation around this. But this might kind of get us thinking about it. But this is a chart on infrastructure as code adoption. So where people are kind of going into like newer infrastructures, whether it be like Docker containers or Chef cookbooks or Vagrant boxes. So or Kubernetes or whatever. So extensive adoption, and the kind of purpley color is 2018 mature DevOps practices, and the pink color is 2018 just the whole all of the responses. So you can see if they're mature, they've had more extensive adoption of kind of infrastructure as code from Chef to Docker, whatever. And then on the far right over here, it's like we have no infrastructure as code. So only 7% of mature, 12%, but you kind of see that middle hump where a lot of people are getting started or have a lot more adoption to do if they're sort of in the bulk of the respondents, where if they're reporting, hey, we were mature in DevOps practices, like we've already kind of crossed a lot of that previously. So.
Well, in fact, let's involve our audience.
Yeah, that's
James.
a good idea. Yeah.
How many of y'all are doing extensive infrastructure as code at your place? All right, a couple. All right.
And then
who's looking to do it, getting started, going down that path? All right, some more. Good deal. Very cool. How many of you are in taco comas? Aha. All right.
Okay, then the next one here is which application security tools are critical to your organization? And I thought this was interesting. I would love to hear some more OWASP folks' thoughts on this. But in 2018, if you had no DevOps practice, you're the purple. And then if you have mature DevOps practices, you're the green this time. So
changing up the colors on this, man.
I know they changed them, right? So like, and I'll kind of read them. I know the font's kind of small. So on the far left, which has the most adoption for both categories, 42% for no DevOps practices and 58% for mature DevOps practices, which they actually add up to 100, but that's not important, but just a weird thing. It's a web application firewall is the first one. And then the next one is container and application security, which huge adoption really for anybody that's going into that market. So almost pretty as high as web application firewalls. Then open source governance, then static application analysis, dynamic application analysis, and software composition analysis. So it's interesting. You see the green is pretty high for almost all categories, and I think there's like 3 or 4 more categories that didn't make this like top slide for what people are adopting. But we see a high drop off in the purple side. Does anybody have any theories on like why? Because I mean, my first guess was like length of lifespan of the type of application. So okay, like WAFs are old, so like they're on the far left, and then static analysis is somewhere in the middle, which I would have pushed that. I would have thought that would be further left. So yeah, container and application security, it's a pretty new thing, and it has higher adoption. So. Any theories? Compliance? Okay, compliance is a good, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So
I really like that, Bankham. It's
Yeah.
a people problem, is what you're saying. Like, and it's an organizational problem. Oh, wow.
That's a good point. To restate that for the folks at home, I don't know if there's actually folks at home, but we like to pretend there are.
There are folks at home. Hello, folks.
There's the comment is that it's about ownership, right? In places where just security owns these tools, it's difficult for them to get them actually, inserted anywhere it matters, right? Because you wander up to the developers and are like, I have a weird piece of software you've never heard of. Why don't you stick it in your builds and have it break them more, right? The usual response is go away. So the shared ownership makes that a lot more likely. Yeah. I don't know who's listening out there. I'm censoring myself.
Good job, Ernest. Yeah, well, that's really important. So I like that thought. Any other thoughts? I think Bankham probably nailed the actual point there.
The wings. Anybody on the wings? Exposure. Well, that's a good point. There is some inherent value to these different things in terms of how much risk they actually reduce, right?
Right.
And especially if you're layering them, you may be like, well, if I've just got 100 Gs to give one slobbering vendor, apologies to any slobbering vendors here. You have to choose. Like you can't always have all of this. So some of the things are higher because they get you bang for your buck, right?
Okay, yeah.
Work your way down. Okay, you call high and you work your way
Thanks,
down.
Josh.
In the DevOpsSec, you're just there undercover and inside the devs team. Now, regardless of what I sarcastically said that you're doing the things that DevOps won't, but it's also part of them saying, I have perfect security or whatever. They don't keep track of that set of issues. So when you go to their meetings, like in Agile, I mean, the person you used to rely on that going way back was the architect. The architect's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they just got a different mindset of how to solve a problem that, and if you don't have the problem, how many you should have asked? How many have never been exposed or whatever?
Yeah.
Cool. And that seems to be the watershed. I mean,
yeah. Well, and that's a good point too on this DevSecOps or DevOps teams. In some organizations, they're kind of buried inside and maybe not budgeted in the way that traditional development or security has been budgeted. So they may even have vendors for these things, right? They may be just like open source projects that they can kind of string together to like meet the needs of that, right? So, and some of these, I would have a hard time of thinking a decent, depending on your code language or whatever, like of a good, static application analysis tool that's like free, right? It's like that's a difficult thing for some languages. So, yeah. Yeah. What did you say again?
you showed results, added to the budget.
Okay, yeah.
I'd say the one thing that I'm seeing here is that the further to the right you go, the deeper into the tech stack you get, and the more involved you're going to become in the actual production of software.
Mm-hmm.
It's fairly trivial to stand up a web application firewall and try and get it trained. containerize an application, not terribly difficult. But you start getting into static and dynamic analysis and composition analysis, you're actually in the weeds of the production workflow.
Right. Right. And you're doing that thing like Ernest said, like you're like, and I'm gonna break the build right now because of that. So,
yeah, well, that's a really good point, right? These are kind of the layers of the onion, right? Somebody can show up and stick a WAF in front of you. Somebody can't. I mean, somebody could show up and set up dynamic application analysis, and then they'd be like, I don't understand all these squiggles. What do they mean, right? Have to take it to a developer for any real traction.
Okay, cool. Any other comments on that? Let's check the next one out because I think this is also helpful for us. At what point in the development process does your organization perform automated application security analysis? So there's a pipeline broken out across the bottom. So there's design and architecture, development, during QA test, prior to release and into production, in production, or throughout the whole process. And it's mature DevOps practices this time is kind of an orangey, yellow, brown type color. And then the purple is 2018 mature DevOps practices.
Yeah, it's a 2017 to 2018.
That's right. That's right. So last year to this year, brown to purple. So, any surprises or thoughts on that? Yeah. Automated tools. Not familiar with those. That's a great point. I don't know if any that exist. Well, 26% of people would disagree with you there, sir. That's right. But the nice thing is we're seeing kind of an uptick in this last thing, and these are people sort of self-affirming, or they're affirming this, right? And they're saying like, hey, we're doing this throughout the whole process. Like when all the components, whatever it means for us to deliver software and write software and get it out to people, like we feel like we're adding security at all the different stages, and so we're seeing kind of a real meaningful jump among the mature DevOps practice people already, just in over a year.
Let's ask about that. Let's unpack that. So in the design and architecture phase, have people heard of, run across tools that help you kind of at the threat modeling, design, et cetera, stage? Apparently there was some meeting, but
I've not heard of any kind of third party that actually does like threat modeling software. Maybe there is. I'm not familiar with it. Just echoing his sentiment.
Cool. I almost wonder if this. So in kind of modern development cycles, usually the design/architecture phase isn't just a paperwork phase, it's also a prototyping phase. So it's possible that that's where that's coming from. So, if we're going to do something, we end up standing up an actual version of it in our development AWS account, which, then you can go ahead and start scanning it, start doing stuff, even though it's really just a prototype of what you're putting together. Mm-hmm. And we would consider that in our design architecture phase.
I will say that there are tools out there that allow you to threat model your application in a visual environment, and then they will point out the flaws in your architecture. So where you have spoofing and tampering and things like that based on how your data flow works. So there are tools out there that do that. Now, I don't know how automated those are because somebody still has to manually enter the architecture. But they will automatically evaluate your architecture and give you vulnerabilities based on that.
I'd count it.
Yeah, I would count it. Yeah, and you think of other stuff where people like kind of implement evil user stories, or there's that the Mozilla Rapid Risk Assessment type thing that you can do quick iterations, kind of like the design sprints of stuff. So, but yeah, I don't know, maybe the word automated might be throwing us off here because it's a bunch of engineers, and so that's natural, right? But any other comments or thoughts on this? I think we got one more graph, and then we have a few questions. So, yeah.
Maybe this is for later, but how effective is this stuff? Because you can run 4 to 5 scans all day on every build. People just suppress all the issues. All of that, we know about that. I mean, is there a way that you guys have that you're able to measure the effectiveness of the use?
Yeah, I don't think I have it here in the slides, but the one of the question, and this will not answer your question 100%, but the DevSecOps Community Survey report, the 4 report, it said how likely are you to be able to respond to an issue? Like if you have a breach happen, what's your confidence level in being able to respond? And so people responded that like between this year and last year, it was something like maybe like 3.7 to 6.4 or whatever on a scale of like 1 to 10, right? So we need some data around that really. But it is but engineers, people that are developers that are filling this out, they're like, hey, because of all the stuff we've done, we feel a lot more confident in how we're doing. Now, whether they actually could, whether all that stuff, like there's a lot of questions in that and details. But
and that's the devil in the details of even just DevOps maturity, right? Like, you've shifted left testing, you're doing testing through your pipeline, but do you really? Do you turn them off, or do they just suck? Like you've got test coverage, but that's a fake number. I'll just be blunt, right? So there's definitely kind of no magic bullet, right? Like you still, in the end, people have to be good at doing something. This I think just kind of is showing a pattern of, okay, if you do these things, you have the chance to be successful. You still have to do them all right.
Yeah, quick comment on that. I think it brings up the issue of separation of duties, where you have to have somebody who is testing it that didn't write it, and the training people on how to operate the scanner correctly, so that you're getting valid results. You can run a scan and get 0 vulnerabilities across the board. I'm not believing it.
That's how I like to run my scanners, by the way. So that's right. Cool. And then this one says, at what point in the development process does your organization perform automated application security analysis? This is design, development, test prior to production, and throughout the process. So we see kind of just, we think about doing, I guess it's talking about like SCA kind of stuff and other types of things, but it's a 2000, this is, no DevOps practices on the, is the yellow, and then mature is the purple. So any thoughts on that?
So obviously a very wide, very strong correlation between having DevOps practices and being able to do application security analysis throughout your delivery pipeline.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so these are some of the questions we wanted to ask the OWASP crew, and then we're, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to go to the DevOps meetup in a couple weeks, and we're going to kind of do similar type of thing there and see what we can do, and maybe kind of pull this around to see how we can kind of bridge this sort of stuff together. One of the things Ernest and I are working on is working on a book on DevSecOps, and so we're doing it with the IT Revolution crew, and we're kind of the DevOps handbook. Like we're trying to help like get the security story more built into kind of the DevOps world. So we want to make sure that like we're. Do you have any other comments on that? Like how our goal is really to help out. Like how do we get this message out to folks?
Yeah, who's familiar with the DevOps handbook that IT Revolution Press put out? It's so Gene Kim and John Willis and a bunch of folks wrote it, and it's kind of the big book in the space. So we're working with them. John Willis is writing it with us, and we're looking to involve the community, especially our local Austin community here, right? Because we've got a bunch of great Infosec people, a bunch of great DevOps people in putting it together. We're looking to include a bunch of case studies of people doing things the awesome way, and use that to help inform everybody about what you can do and the benefits that kind of real people and real businesses have seen from it.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Like we really want to tell the story. We love we do love the like Austin community. So like more stories we can bring out of our Austin community. Like we're stoked for that. For doing that. So.
I joined the Austin OWASP Slack if I could figure out how to join it. I went and clicked around. It's like contact an administrator. I will provide no link. It's like, oh. So what we want to do, we've got a number of questions that we just want to have an open discussion on and start kind of get me all into it. We'll go and get the local DevOps communities into it, and would like to kind of see what we can do to spur DevSecOps discussion here locally.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of what
James put in a warning. Don't talk forever. we're going to be, gunning it through. We've got 15 minutes, so All right, so question one. So this is probably a stronger question for the, well, not necessarily. So many of you are security people, but many of you perhaps know more about DevOps than that other security person in the, in the cube next to you. That guy doesn't know nothing. So what do you wish security people would know about DevOps? And if y'all don't mind, I'm actually going to take notes in a virtual whiteboarding sort of festivity. Oop.
And just to note that we have some people on the phone line, so if I have a mic to bring around, unless you could speak really loudly.
Yes. We'll bring the mic around, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll, if people just throw out a short thing, we'll be cognizant about repeating it.
Yeah, and we've set up a hotline if people from on the call want to call in, 1-800-4-DevOps. So okay.
What do you wish? I mean, it could be what is it that you want to know about DevOps? What do you wish other folks in your org knew more about DevOps? Specific things. Boy, I wish I knew how to integrate security testing in the ATDD phase.
I'm gonna channel my my own engineers here and basically say, just go look in the code. You can find your answers to your security questions right there. Like, where do you find those answers? And I'm like, I don't know.
So that's a really good point, right? I wish they knew how to go look in my code, and that's actually something. That's a great example. At Alien Vault, that's one of the things that I've done is be like, hey, look, here's the Bitbucket. Like, it's like, what users are on your Bastion? It's like, here's the Bitbucket link to the infrastructure as code definition. Please stop asking me that question.
Yeah, what about the issue of documentation? And we talked about going to the Bitbucket, but how about to the runbook or to the build book for that app?
So you wish security people knew? It's a little reversed. Yeah. Okay, that's all right. That'll be the next slide, of course. But wishing that they would write documentation. Although there is also the there's an interesting other kind of syndrome there of we have a lot of documentation on our wiki. I would say more than would ever be read, and that's kind of as much of a problem. They're like, "Where's the thing on?" I'm like, "It's in there somewhere." But one thing I will mention on this is frequently Infosec and DevOps people use different language about things, right? In early DevOps world, it was interesting. We would go to the Velocity conference, and one of the things they talked about there was when people start talking about performance, like web app developers versus operations people, and front-end app people versus back-end app people, they would use very just fundamentally different paradigms, and sometimes they would even be using the same words, latency, throughput, whatever, but they would not mean the same things by them. We're actually having that problem right now. Like my client folks are like, we need a network diagram that shows how, end users use the Amazon console and then it goes and does stuff. I'm like, so after that point, there's no network, or there is, but it's magically hidden AWS network. Like there's a control flow. But if you ask me for a network diagram, I'm going to put a big gap there because that's what network means to me. And they're like, that's not what network means to us. It's like, that's fair.
All right. I'll just say the security people ought to know that the DevOps might in many cases, if not most, be their better ally and coming from the top and through product managers. Because the thing you mentioned, everybody's geared towards not having change, right? The change is the enemy, and you're going to come, and you're coming with that change. So do it. And, that'd be my other advice. Do it quietly for a while.
Yeah, that's a fair point, right? Depending on your type of product manager, there's like the more technical product managers, but a lot of times a product manager in your organization may be the quote happy slappy marketing type. Like they're much less likely to be receptive to your story than the engineers.
So, kind of building on your example, Ernest, on the network diagram, and also the first bullet point of answers in code and security as code. I think security people, especially risk compliance, like those who aren't necessarily technical, I wish they would know that code is more auditable than diagrams and processes.
Yeah.
And in that sense that, you know, if you have your security group set up in a Terraform and that's in GitHub, that is more auditable and repeatable and verifiable than putting together a Visio and sticking it in a file.
That's
like,
a great point. I get hassled over why is that you know, lucid chart diagram not up to date with the new security groups. It's like, because we do work here and we check that shit in like every day, like but it's right there, right? Like
and to that point, like a +1 in a code review on the change there is more powerful than having a meeting to review the diagram and hope that somebody implements whatever you said in the meeting and translates that and gets it actually correct and pushes it the right way. Having that be in code, right, is infrastructure and code, and ultimately what we want to get to is where it's security as code. Right? We're not there yet as an industry, but that's where we want to get to because it is more reliable.
Yeah, and like that's a little bit threatening, right? So again, coming from the operations point of view, the whole thing about infrastructure as code, right? A lot of people were in ops because they weren't developers and they found that to be a threatening message. But it doesn't mean you have to be able to write Java code, right? It means you have to be able to write stuff down rigorously enough that a computer understands it, which, to be honest, security people should be good at. Like if you can't write down your requirements in a rigorous way, like then maybe neither of these jobs is the job for you, right? But you know, ideally that's something we're strong at. Here, sorry, we got.
How do you interface a change control board and DevOps or you know, a security validation or audit with DevOps?
I was going to say that, I mean, what he was talking about earlier with regard to having code being more audible than some Visio diagram somewhere, that's directly in alignment too with the Agile manifesto, right? So I mean, there's large disconnect that I've seen between product managers, which are happy slappy, you know, marketing types. They're, oh, I don't know about that. That's technology stuff, type of mentality. But that is a direct relation to what we're trying to achieve from the program perspective. I think that's really valuable.
Well, and actually, I don't want to bad talk the product and product marketing folks too much. Just thinking back on my own history. So specifically here at National Instruments, when I was running an ops team and we were trying to do this stuff, like there was initial resistance with the dev team, and the web marketing director was actually our biggest ally because he was like, you know, hey, he had the holistic view, right? He was like, yeah, I want it to be performant. I don't want y'all to point fingers at each other to say whose fault performance is. I don't care. And I'm paying about half of y'all's salaries because IT is cheap. So make that happen, right? So that, yeah.
I just had one more comment about what security needs to know about DevOps. And I think a big problem that I've seen is that DevOps is enabling the business to function, and security doesn't see themselves as enabling DevOps to do their job successfully. It's security is a world of no, and how am I going to stop things from happening, not how am I going to enable DevOps to help enable the business.
Yeah, that's fair. But also, to be fair, it's frequently driven by resource constraints on both sides, right? Like yesterday, we're working towards our PCI recertification at Alien Vault, and I was like, well, because of this, this, and this, like this stuff is not in scope. And they're like, but we already put it in scope in all the documentation, and that would be a lot of work to change. And I'm like, it's a lot of work to do all the actual technical shit for all the, and they're just like, yeah, but that's your work, not our work, right? And so that's, you know, it's like, so, you know, we had a little spirited discussion about that. But.
Yeah, so one of the things in your presentation that kind of struck me was the percentage of developers who feel like they don't have time to spend on security, and versus the percentage of developers who believe security is important. And contrary to what you just said, me as the security person, I can be their biggest advocate. I can fight for them to have time to actually work on security. I just have to know that there's a problem. If a developer comes to me and says, hey dude, I'd really like to work on that cross-site scripting vulnerability, but I don't know how it fit into the sprint. Well, guess what? I can talk to the business person. I can talk to their stakeholders, and I can say, look, this is really important. Let me tell you the business value of fixing the security thing. But if I don't know, I can't help them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, timing-wise, we should go on to this next question about what DevOps people should know about security, and that's a great one. Yeah. No, that it was a segue. Yeah. Josh segued it.
Well, I think that's a good segue too. Security can be your friend, and one of the biggest areas is security will help you advocate for burning down technical debt. Right? Like they will be your ally in doing that, and that's a huge thing for DevOps folks to remember. The other one I'd add is that adding security tools to your CI/CD pipeline makes your code better first and more secure, like as the footnote, but it will make your code better, which is more reliable, more stable, better able to serve the business.
Absolutely. So yeah, so segue into this as especially as Infosec people, what is it that you want the DevOps folks and just for the record, by DevOps people, this means all the engineers. We don't subscribe to the theory that ops people got rebranded as DevOps people. DevOps means the developers and the operations people that are involved in producing the product.
Sorry. One of the things I see on the security and DevOps, we take the long view. We're not looking at the single product view. Security, we may come across as no, but we're looking at the long view and looking at a lot of the compliance stuff that the product teams don't necessarily see. We look at the enterprise, not just the one product. And DevOps sometimes they don't seem to take that into account. They're focused on delivering their thing. Their product manager is delivering their thing. We're looking at the enterprise as a whole. We try to, like I said, we take a long view. Security really needs to do that because we look at the enterprise. It is what it is. We're not just code people and product people.
Yeah, and in the same vein, sometimes defining a security problem or coming up with an answer to a security question takes some research and time. And I love it when engineers come and say, "Hey, I'm working on this. Should I do it this way or that way?" But if I don't have like a predefined, "Oh, I've thought about this risk before, go this way," then it's taking too long for me to come up with an answer, and now I'm blocking them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the big things, both in DevOps and then in DevSecOps, is blockers. I think is the impedance mismatches, and one of the significant impedance mismatches is that the pace of a DevOps team tends to be fairly fast, right? So they'll show up and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I would love your feedback on this design by tomorrow, yo, because then we're going to do it. It's going to get in for this next release," and that's it's kind of neither right or wrong. That's what they're hired to do.
So I have one more thought here. One of the core tenets of information security is defense in depth. And it's occurred to me that it's really difficult to maintain defense in depth while maintaining agility. right? Because defense in depth usually says that I have a firewall in place that has certain rules, but the agile guys say, no, no, we don't want those rules, right? And we actually had a discussion about this just the other day. So I'm kind of curious your take on that. How do we maintain agility while at the same time maintaining things like defense in depth and kind of classical security architecture?
I'll give you my 30-second view, and then James can as well. But so I think the trick is defense in depth is great, but to the degree to which it is automated and not quote rules, it's successful, right? So in fact, all of the kind of DevOps discussion and literature about operational failures, right? They always use that same kind of Swiss cheese metaphor, right? You've got all these layers, and when the holes in the slices of Swiss cheese line up, you have operational failures, which is exactly the same as the security story, right? The trick is rules, and do you have something, or can I use your 30 seconds? Okay, I know. So this is something that was a really big discovery for me from Adrian Cockcroft from Netflix, right? So I was at, what was it, AppSec? He was here, yeah, AppSec USA when it was here in town. He was here and he talked, and one of the things he said was, well, at Netflix, we don't have any process. And I was like, that's an insane thing for somebody to say, right? Because I'm like, well, I always have a process, even if it's Lord of the Flies process, right? And so I sat down with Gene Kim, and I was like, what the hell is he talking about, right? And as we talked about it and kind of the Netflix story, what I realized was he meant all of the process was automated. And when it becomes automated, the emotional content of it falls away, especially for engineers, right? So for them, instead of having the guy with the clipboard who's coming around saying, you're running non-compliant AWS instances, everybody hates that guy, and it's why nag is the primary word used to describe Infosec people. So they changed their system so that, oh yeah, if you don't tag instances right and run them right, they just get taken down by the system. And everybody was actually happier about that. Like, from one point of view, that's the most draconian level of process enforcement. But actually, once it's part of the system, engineers are like, that's great. So a little longer than I wanted to go, but to me, the way to do defense in depth, as long as each of those levels is an automated thing and not a guy with a clipboard thing, it'll be successful.
Cool. Well, we're at the top of the time, so I appreciate everybody's kind of involvement and help with this. Like, we're really excited about it. If you can get the slides if you send me an email, but if you kind of put a thing in there like, hey, I'd really like to talk to you more about this, or like stuff that we're interested in helping out with. We'd love to tell your story. We'd love to hear of any wins that you've had in kind of the DevSecOps space. And we kind of appreciate the time here. Also, my friend Brad, who also works at Signal Sciences, and Teddy came in, and they had a bunch of leftover swag from a conference, and I was like, yeah, give it away. Austin, we love swag. So anyways, first come, first serve on that. And then and I just found out Orlando just joined the Signal Sciences team, and he said, yeah, I first met you guys, and I got a pair of flip-flops. So if you get the T-shirt, you might later find yourself working at Signal Sciences, which would be okay. So we'd be all right with that. But
well, cool. And as a next step, in fact, if we can get an invite to the OWASP Slack thing, maybe we could make a channel. Okay, we'll make a channel for this, and anybody that wants to discuss this further online would love to keep chatting about it.
Much.